Okay. Happy Friday, Michael Stein. So we have a chat box and we have a Q&A box. And if you have any questions, even though we can't see everybody, please sign in or please utilize the Q&A box so that we can answer some of your questions. We have a lot of panelists here and it's really exciting. I'm Jamie Blau with Next Step New York Real Estate, and also with Next Step, I want to introduce you to Sharon Cantor.
Hi.
Hey, Sharon.
Hi, Jamie. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Great.
Great. So welcome to a discussion today about mental, emotional, and physical health and wellness during COVID. I'm really excited to bring today's topic to you and introduce this panel. I want to thank everyone for joining, including my panelists and everyone who's joining here today as an attendee. Again, please use, if you are an attendee, please use the Q&A so that we can answer any questions live that might come up. Today we're faced with more personal and financial confusion and uncertainty than we've ever experienced before. And currently we are in quarantine. Many businesses have shut down. We have to stay at home. Our homes have now, its use and purpose have doubled and tripled. Our homes are now our gyms, our restaurants, our schools, our offices. Maybe it's even a shelter for friends and families who have left their homes. There are a lot of people that have shifted and moved around if they live with somebody who may be immunocompromised or live in places where COVID has spread rampantly, like it has here in New York City, and might have been able to leave before their lockdown. Others were possibly, not in such a good place before COVID, and now they're dealing with, maybe they were planning to separate or get divorced, and how does somebody like that, what do they do today? Also, it's harder now than ever to get groceries and food deliveries, healthy snacks. It's not as easy as it was, or our new normal has changed. Businesses have shut down or were forced to close, like gyms, health food stores. Maybe you have a juice shop that you used to go to, and that was your healthy breakfast. Today, we have experts here that are very familiar with helping their clients emotionally, mentally, and physically deal with many of life's struggles. Today, more than ever, they have had to pivot their business practices to be able to continue to help their patients and their clients. So please welcome, we have a lot of hot topics today to talk about. Please welcome Lindsay Pfeffer, matrimonial and divorce and family law. Hi, Lindsay. We also have Stephen Kosmicki, psychotherapist. Hey, Stephen.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Ellen Schweitzer, life and divorce coach. Hey, Ellen.
Hi, everybody.
We have Justine Roth, nutritionist. Hey, Justine. And we have Noam Tamir, he's a personal trainer with TS Fitness. Hey, Noam.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Great.
Okay, so Sharon, why don't you please go ahead and do the honors of welcoming our first guest.
Great. I'm going to do that. We are going to start today having a conversation with Lindsay Pfeffer. And Lindsay is a partner at Cohen, Rabin, Stein, Schumann LLP, which is a boutique matrimonial and family law firm based in Manhattan. She's been practicing law for more than 11 years. She's admitted to the New York and New Jersey bar. Her practice includes all aspects of divorce and family law matters, including negotiation, litigation, and trial work. She is a graduate of Brandeis University and Cardozo Law School.
Welcome, Lindsay. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Hold on.
We're holding. I have lots of questions for you.
Never mind. My sound was weird. Hello. How is everyone?
The new norm of Zoom. Everyone's good. So I have a lot of questions for you. You work in an area where you're helping people who are either getting married and helping them with their prenups, or they're separated or divorced. You're working with divorced couples, right? So how are you doing business right now during quarantine?
So right now, the courts are not fully operational. They are accepting emergency applications. So I'm still able to work on those. Still negotiating divorce settlements, still working on prenuptial and postnuptial agreements. All of that can happen outside of court. So there's still a lot of work that can be done and a lot of prep work that can be done for people who are considering divorce, and a lot of Zoom calls.
Great. Well, so that's, yeah, there's a lot of change for everybody. What kind of matters do you handle?
So generally speaking, I handle really a variety of family law matters and divorce matters. So they involve child custody issues, child support, parental rights, domestic violence, orders of protection, and like I said, prenups and postnups. And yeah, it really runs the gamut.
Great. So, like, what advice do you have for people that might be quarantined in a very, very, very tricky situation right now and what are you hearing? What are some of the types of, scenarios that you're seeing? Maybe somebody's quarantined in a tricky situation with a partner that they're separating from. How does somebody handle that?
Yeah, so there may be a lot of discomfort and tension in the home already, even before all of this began. So really, I like to tell clients to try to focus the anxiety and the tension towards getting organized, towards coming up with a course of action. And that involves either consulting with a divorce attorney as soon as possible if the person feels comfortable doing that privately at home. It also involves working on identifying the family's finances. So looking at assets and liabilities, trying to figure out everything that's involved in the marital pot. And that includes the person's individual accounts, their spouse's accounts, any real estate, getting all of that in order and trying to get all of the documentation for all of that in order as well. And some steps to doing that involve maybe consulting with an accountant, an independent accountant, not one that's been used by both spouses, a financial advisor. And if the couple has children, it's really important to keep in mind that it's necessary to shield the children from any hostility in the home to the extent possible. Because even though you're in quarantine right now, what happens after quarantine? We're still looking back. The judges will still look back. How did parents conduct themselves during this time period? Did they do their best to help the children feel as calm and protected as possible? And that includes especially refraining from disparaging the other parent in front of the children and engaging in any kind of alienating behavior. So there is a sense of empowerment to doing this prep work and keeping in mind, you're in a fishbowl regardless of whether or not you're in quarantine or after quarantine, to help yourself later on when you actually are proceeding with a divorce.
There must be a lot of, a variety of different people that have really sticky situations. Are you experiencing that? Like, do you have a lot of clients that are really stressed out because they have to pass kids back and forth into different homes? That must be a tricky situation. How do you resolve that?
Yeah, there's a lot of issues between parents who have custody agreements in place and can't really follow them or don't feel comfortable following them. For example, if a parent is involved in a relationship with someone in healthcare and the other parent doesn't feel comfortable having that child go back and forth between homes and staying overnight, that sort of situation is becoming more prevalent. So there are certain guidelines that matrimonial practitioners have been talking about as of late to help parents deal with issues like that. So, and that's whether or not they're in the midst of a divorce or child custody matter, or if they already have an agreement in place and they don't feel like they can really comply. And they're concerned about later on being held responsible for violations and so forth. So the first thing that's most important is to follow CDC and local and state guidelines when it comes to safety at home and outdoors. And then, like I said, creating a calm and stress-free environment to the extent possible. Be compliant with existing custody agreements to the extent possible too when it comes to communication, FaceTime, text, email, all of that, of course, is untouched. But when it comes to things like overnights, you can be creative. You can say, okay, instead of every 3 nights, you have an overnight, you're going to have an extended period of time with the child outdoors, let's just say in a park across the street from, my apartment or plaza, something that hasn't already been closed. And additional FaceTime or nightly phone calls that maybe they didn't have before. So there are ways of working around it, and also makeup time. You know, if you talk about the fact that, okay, you maybe missed out on some overnights for the time being, but when this is behind us, you know, you'll get some additional weekends. And then if finances are an issue when it comes to child support, especially because people, you know, are losing jobs, they are, you know, cutting back hours at work, they're not necessarily earning what they used to, you know, they might be running into financial trouble. Cooperation is key.
Right.
You know, when it comes to maybe giving someone a break on child support for a temporary period of time, if you put it in writing and you say, this is, you know, this is because of the, obviously the circumstances at hand, this is not permanent arrangement, but, you know, just work together as best you can for the sake of the children.
Yeah, I think that that point, cooperation is key, is vital and essential across the board for almost everything that we're dealing with right now. We have a question, actually. I'm gonna pass it on to Sharon to handle the Q&A. We have a question for you.
We do have a question. We are being asked what is the difference between divorce and legal separation?
That's a good question. So separation agreement is a negotiated agreement, a written agreement between spouses that you can enter into with or without a divorce filing. Usually you want to file for divorce at some point during the time period that you're negotiating the agreement, because the filing date cuts off the marital pot, essentially. So whatever comes in terms of earnings, let's say after the date of filing, that's considered separate property. So that it's important to either file for divorce at some point while you're negotiating an agreement or agree on a cutoff date. But once you enter into a separation agreement, that's a legally binding, enforceable document. And you actually don't need to get divorced in order to comply with it and abide by it and, you know, divide the marital estate and figure out child support, figure out spousal support and all of that. At the point of divorce, you're taking that legal document and you're incorporating its terms into a divorce judgment. And once that judgment is entered, that's officially the date that one is divorced. But again, a separation agreement is an enforceable document on its own before you get the divorce judgment. I hope that answers the question. If anyone has any additional questions, just let me know.
I think we have another question, but before we get to that, I wanted to ask you about prenups and postnups. What's happening with couples that so many weddings have had to be canceled or shifted, dates are clearly going to be moved. We can't get together. So what's happening with prenups and postnups?
Yeah, so a lot of wedding dates are, of course, being postponed, but this time can actually be used to negotiate and spend more time figuring out the terms of prenups. And working out those terms can actually alleviate some of the stresses that these couples will be facing later on, especially now with having to, make changes in terms of their wedding vendors, dates, and all of that. So it's important not to wait too long, just generally speaking. When it comes to prenup, I recommend usually at least 6 months in advance, you want to start the process. So all of that can still happen in quarantine. So even with my clients who may have postponed wedding dates, we're still working on their prenups as though their wedding is around the corner, because hopefully it will be. And I can go over some common reasons for a prenup, but in general, they can be helpful for people in ways that they don't necessarily anticipate. For example, they encourage discussion of money-related issues that arise during marriage. They require financial disclosure, so you really know who you're marrying, and if they have any debt that you don't necessarily know about. It helps just give financial security for spouses who may become financially dependent on their spouse during marriage, and that's especially important now because, like I said, employment situations have changed. Some people might plan on becoming full-time stay-at-home parents. Like, these are all things that should be raised before marriage, and prenups can actually help someone who is becoming a stay-at-home parent. It's not necessarily the wealthier party that benefits from a prenup. So all of that can still be in the works in quarantine. And the same goes for postnups as well. Postnups are entered into after marriage. The reasons for entering postnups are similar to the reasons for entering prenups, but generally the need for a postnup arises where there is some prospect of divorce on the horizon, and There's uncertainty about the future of the marriage. So you still might want to be working on your marriage, going to counseling, but you want some sense of financial security in place in the event of divorce, and post-ups are useful for that purpose as well.
I was muted. Sorry about that. We have another really great question that just came in, and I'm going to ask it because it's coupled with another question that I had for you. Are you seeing an increase in divorce filings right now because of COVID? And how do you think that this will affect moving forward your work, divorces?
Yeah. So right now, you can't actually file for divorce at the moment because the courts are really only accepting emergency applications and dealing with matters that are already pending. But that may change because things are changing on a day-to-day basis with the courts. They're enabling video conferencing for purposes that they weren't allowing previously, so that may change. But the prospect of getting divorced is entering a lot of people's minds at this point because, for obvious reasons, there were tensions in relationships before this started, and now they're really amplified. So I am getting more inquiries about divorce. Can't necessarily file yet, but like I said, it doesn't mean the process can't begin via negotiations and just figuring out a course of action. And I think that after the quarantine is lifted, we're going to see what happened in China, which is a serious spike in divorce cases. The courts may become very busy and overwhelmed, and that's another reason why doing some of the prep work in advance is important, because you want to be in a place where you can act when the courts become operational and you're not dealing with the backlog that the courts may be facing in terms of getting a date with a judge if you need to litigate and so forth. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but I'm definitely seeing inquiries about divorce and parenting issues, following custody agreements and dealing with tensions, conflicts between parents who have differing opinions on what is safe for their children and what isn't.
I'm sure. It would be great if you could put your contact information in the chat so that everybody has it if they would like to reach out to you. I want to move on to our next guest. Sharon, would you like to do the honors?
Yes, I will, as long as I can keep unmuted.
I was unmuting her. She was unmuting.
We were both unmuting me.
We were doing the same thing.
We are going to turn it over now to Stephen Kosmicki. He's a licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapist. He has worked in the mental health field for close to 20 years and in private practice for 10 of those. He's completing extensive training in psychoanalysis in New York City. He also brings a wide array of experience to his practice, including performing arts background and the understanding of the creative process, his own personal work in mindfulness, yoga, and various mind-body modalities.
Thank you.
Hey, Stephen, welcome.
Hey, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here. Stephen, questions for you. People are feeling overwhelmed right now. So much uncertainty, so much change in their lives. What kind of recommendations, do you have for anybody who's struggling with emotional discomfort?
That's an excellent question and something I'm dealing with a lot in my practice. I think the first recommendation I would make is really just to get a perspective on what's going on. For most of us, and emotionally especially, we're all feeling so many strong mixed feelings, and the people I'm talking to are just, the feelings are changing day to day, sometimes hour to hour. And with the anxiety and the stress of all these changes that we've had, and then of course the threat of the coronavirus, it can often be overwhelming. And one of the things that I've been thinking about, there was actually this excellent article in the Harvard Business Review by David Kessler, who worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross on stages of grief. And he basically framed what we're feeling now is grief. And of course, many people are feeling a sense of loss of loved ones that have died, or friends or loved ones that are getting sick, or themselves getting sick. And then there's all sorts of other types of grief. We're experiencing so many losses sensory deprivation for all of us that are working over Zoom. We don't get the sense of like feeling people in the room or a sense of touch, a loss of routine, loss of income, loss of control, loss of certainty. And he typified this other type of grief I thought was very interesting called anticipatory grief. And one of the really insipid things about the coronavirus is that people are dying, but we're not really registering it. Like if you were walking around the streets of New York City and were really not kind of oblivious to what's going on and not reading the news, you wouldn't necessarily know that hundreds of people are dying every day. And, you know, like in wartime, bombs go off and there's evidence and you see and understand on a sort of deep level what's happening, but this is silent and it's out of view many of the times. So with that anticipatory grief, you know, not knowing in the sense of uncertainty, there's a real sense of a loss of safety. And so, as you can imagine, we're all dealing with all these mixed feelings all the time. And from physical pain, it results in racing thoughts, disorganization. Many people I know are reporting a difficulty concentrating, like there's this brain fog. So in many ways, it also is, this is a traumatic time. So we're also having traumatic responses as well, which could be a whole nother webinar. But
and Stephen, this could all be somebody who was happy, healthy, normal, you know, prior to COVID, right? I mean, it's not just, it's really, everybody is feeling a change. Everybody's feeling a sense of loss of the normalcy of to some degree, right?
I would say yes. I would say that different people are managing it differently, and this depends, you know, it's different for each of us. And I think this is why it's really important for all of us to take our emotional temperature and decide what to do about that. And so for some of us, it might be really helpful to actually connect to our feelings and then talk to somebody who we really trust, who we feel like can listen to us. But for other people and for us at other times, it may be so intense and so overwhelming that we might need to distract ourselves, find a way to ground ourselves, or find a way to self-soothe, you know? So everybody, we're all doing these things, right? We're all eating. We were talking before the panel, we were talking before about how, you know, food takes on such a greater importance. Like, you know, I know I'm still working all week. Like my Friday night meal, I'm like, I already know what it is. I know what I'm having with it. I'm really looking forward to it. Sometimes
we have to look forward to something.
yeah, sometimes I'm looking forward to it on Monday, you know? But yeah, we have to have something to look forward. We have to have something to balance. So I think it's really so much about balance. And again, taking your emotional temperature and knowing what your limits are, you know, with your digital diet. Like, are you, you know, if you're looking at the news all day long, including up to going to bed, that's going to be really anxiety provoking. So it's really taking your emotional temperature and making decisions moment to moment, hour to hour, to try to stay in the present moment as much as possible and make the choices that are really going to help you keep kind of, you know, even keeled.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephen. That's very helpful. Sharon, let's go on to our, thank you, Stephen. Let's meet Ellen. Why don't you go ahead and introduce Ellen for us?
Very good. So we are next going to speak with Ellen Schweitzer, who is a certified life coach and a certified divorce coach. Her life experiences are what have led her to where she is today, which is a happy and confident and fulfilled person. Her goal is to get other people to that same place. Ellen's area of expertise includes working with young adults, parents, healthy eating and fitness, divorce, blending families, raising stepchildren, elevating self-esteem and confidence, and improving family relationships and communication skills.
Hey, Ellen.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So some questions for you. You know, people are dealing with so much uncertainty right now. Tell me about that. What are you seeing in your business practice? You are a certified life and divorce coach. So you talk to lots and lots and lots of people. What kind of feelings are they having?
And they're going, as what Stephen was talking about, the uncertainty, listen, they're feeling anxious, they're feeling scared, they're worried about their health of themselves, their families, their parents, all of that stuff. I would say that the biggest thing that I'm seeing that is really universal, it's the feeling of uncertainty. We really don't know. Every day it changes. When are we getting out of our home? So I think that is probably the thing I'm dealing with the most. And I know that I'm feeling that the most, and people are geared up. Our brains are wired to that. If we don't know what's going to happen, we expect the worst. It's, fight or flight. And there was a study that I recently read about that I thought was so interesting. And it really sums it up for me and a lot of people that I've shared it with. And British researchers did this years ago. And they tested, let's say 100 people. I forgot what the number was, 100, 1,000, but 50% of them were told they were getting a shock. They were going to get an electric shock. So they braced themselves for it. The other 50% were told that they may or may not get the shock. They were so agitated. So it just goes to show that if you know something's coming and you can prepare for it and you're certain of it, you're way better off than that feeling of uncertainty. Am I getting it or not? So that really, that resonated for me. And I've shared that with people and everyone feels the same way. If we knew what was happening and we knew when we were getting out, if we were safe, we would all feel a lot better. This is uncharted territory.
Completely uncharted territory. And you're right. We're in that 50% bucket where we just don't know yet. So, and you're doing a lot of interesting things in your business practice. Tell us about how you've pivoted and how you're online and things like that.
So, I do FaceTime with my clients all the time. So this is not new for me, but I've never done groups. I have my weight loss group on, but it's 10 people. So what I decided to do was, and what I'm encouraging my clients to do, and also it fights that uncertainty a little bit, dive into what are you naturally good at? What is something that Jamie, you're great at putting people together. Clearly, Sharon, you too. So you're diving into it. Dive into what you're good at. I love being a cheerleader. I didn't even know that I was a leader, but I that's something that now I decided to really feed into what I like to do. I love to make people happy. I love to be a cheerleader. I love to put people together. So I started offering this free Zoom call every Wednesday for an hour. And I'm building a community, and people are really, the messages that I'm getting have been so moving for me that it's actually helping people connect that way. So I'm diving into what I feel I'm naturally good at.
Yeah, giving an outlet to everybody to connect more ways than we can now while we're doing it virtually is just incredible. And, I've been a part of those Wednesday afternoon Zoom calls. And what's interesting is just listening to how people are taking this and how they're dealing with this in their own way. Some people are taking up different hobbies and just giving each other advice. I think right now we have to be there for one another more than we ever have, as much as possible, and connect with one another. And that's one thing that you're doing. You're doing a fabulous job with that. So congrats.
All about the love. Honestly, it sounds so corny. If you have love in your heart to give it.
Yeah, that's great. What other things are you seeing? What other, aside from uncertainty, people don't understand what's happening. So
I'm seeing a lot of loss, like what Stephen said, we've lost so much. People are losing, my city clients have gone out of the city. Most of them have gone home out of the city. I'm seeing people adjusting to living under their parents' roof. I'm seeing clients that have their young adult children living in their home. So balancing that, communicating. I've had to coach people on how, when they go home, can they talk to their parents about the my own daughter said to me, Mom, listen, when I'm done with work at 5:30, you gotta leave me alone. Like, I don't want you, because I'm like, oh, how was your day? She said, I'm used to being on my own and not having a parent. So there's been a lot of that, within the homes, learning how to communicate. And if you share, I'm encouraging them to share with their loved one how they feel. you know, as the parent, you want your child to be comfortable. As the kid, you want to be able to express, this is what I need. Can you not talk on the speakerphone when you're doing a call? It's distracting me from my job. So I'm helping people manage relationships because people are living under different, you know, different circumstances.
The new norm has shifted. We're in a new norm, new uncharted territory for sure. Well, thank you so much. Stephen and Ellen, if you want to put your contact information in the chat, that would be great. I'm going to pass it over to Sharon to introduce Justine.
Hi again. So we are now going to have a conversation with Justine Roth. She is a certified eating disorder dietitian and nutrition therapist with over 15 years experience. Her philosophy is rooted in a non-diet, weight-inclusive approach that works towards empowering individuals to identify what healthy means to them. She received her bachelor's degree from University of Delaware and holds a master's in nutrition education from Columbia University's Teachers College. She's the founder of Justine Roth Nutrition, as well as the director of food and nutrition at the New York State Psychiatric Institute at Columbia Medical Center. Thank you for joining us, Justine.
Hi, thanks.
Hi, thank you for joining us. So there was actually, somebody had posted a question, which was more of a statement, and I want to start off my conversation with you about that. They said that they have a very easy time being 6 feet away, but having more of a difficult time staying 6 feet from the refrigerator, which I thought was very funny. But that's what we're seeing. Like the refrigerator is now telling us, okay, go back to work, get away, get out of here. What's happening? Like how can people keep a healthy diet, maintain a good relationship with food while they're sitting in their kitchens all day long and sitting around it more?
Yeah, I mean, I think that interestingly, my advice to this question would be no different, or my advice would be not different if we weren't in the middle of a pandemic. And that's just taking the focus away from your sort of thoughts around food. You know, if working in your kitchen is problematic, then don't work in your kitchen. You know, I know that sounds kind of black and white, but a lot of times the stress and the focus that we feel around food is really not about the food. And, you know, we have therapists on the panel, so I'm sure that they could, you know, would agree. But I think that more often than not, identifying your emotional versus actual physical hunger is really important. And I think that identifying physical hunger can be sort of easy in a way. So people will tend to go to that as an out of like, well, I'm hungry, I gotta be hungry. Whereas emotional hunger is really hard to get to. Meaning like, are you really hungry for something, or are you feeling stressed or anxious or, you know, angry at somebody and frustrated with something? And so more often than not, it's easier to deal with the emotions of overeating maybe than it is to deal with the emotions of something else that's super bothering you. Yeah.
But boredom is an emotion that we can't really deal with too much, you know, unless I think people are pivoting and trying to do other things. We have to keep ourselves active as much as possible and start a routine, right? I'm sure that you guys would all agree keeping a routine would be helpful to conquer the boredom, to conquer the eating.
Totally. I mean, listen, if you think about a weekend where it's like a rainy or a snowstorm weekend where you're kind of stuck in your apartment, these are short-lived scenarios where everyone will say, oh, I ate so much, or I baked, or I made chili, or I made this, or I made that. And like, it's centered around food. This is just a longer term version of that. And I think, whereas with the snowstorm weekend or whatever, you know, you're not going to necessarily start intervening and doing anything different. I think here it really is important to plan differently. So the boredom, I think taking a little bit of that pressure away from yourself as far as like, this is not a normal situation. Like we said, the new normal. So expecting yourself to be as active as you were before, or to keep the same kind of quote unquote healthy meal plan that you were keeping before is just not realistic. And so I think lowering that bar that you're setting for yourself I truly believe does help combat the boredom, quote unquote. Because like you can be bored, but bored doesn't have to involve going to the refrigerator. Like I think oftentimes with food and with eating, we sort of will take a backseat to it, as meaning like we're active participants in what we eat. And we're active participants in when we decide to go to the fridge. And I very much think that there is a place for emotional eating. I think that sometimes food brings us joy, and sometimes food keeps us busy, and sometimes food is the hobby that we wanted to, you know, embark on. And so taking away, again, that negative connotation with emotional eating will, I think, takes away some of that like almost drive to emotional eat, if that makes sense, because we oftentimes will kind of sabotage ourselves. Does that make sense?
I've heard of, you know, people gaining their COVID-19 and some funny memes of what we're going to look like trying to roll ourselves out the door after, you know, quarantine is over. I think part of what you know, my questions for you would be like, you know, right now there's a limit on being able to get food.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you do make that order and it finally arrives, and you're not really a cook.
Right.
Do you have any, you know, tips for people who have to now shift everything that they've ever known to do?
Right. Well, unfortunately, I think that's like, you know, I could answer as far, I think it's a broad issue, because I think if you don't cook, then you were probably traditionally ordering food out, and that's not so healthy. That's not quote unquote healthy either. So, you know, it actually, I think more often than not, people really struggle with ordering out because the portions are difficult, and it's hard to gauge how people are making food. So I actually feel like the ability, even if you're not a gourmet cook or kind of dislike cooking, honing in on a few easy, like either recipes or, you know, variations of something that you could make, that even if it's eggs, like scrambled eggs is completely a healthy dinner or breakfast or lunch. Like it doesn't, I think that, again, I'm going to keep circling back to this, but like the pressure that we put on ourselves about what our meals need to look like versus like what Steven said of like being excited about a meal, you know, the latter scenario is going to be way more enjoyable. So I think that taking that pressure away of like having to make 4-course, you know, fancy meals, and, you know, if you need help, either consulting a dietitian or going online and sort of, you know, easy recipes or meal delivery services, you know, it's everywhere. Everybody is kind of capitalizing on this pandemic in a way, and not in a bad way. You know, there's a million blog articles, there's a lot of information out there for people. And I think like for someone that doesn't cook, I think that either, you know, exploring one of the more affordable meal delivery services, either that are just like heat ready or Fresh Direct, if you can grab a delivery time for Fresh Direct. Fresh Direct has a lot of meal options for you, and they have like pre-calorie counted, a lot of them. So a lot of them are like portion controlled.
Great.
Yeah,
no, that's all great. And maybe you can also put your contact information in case anybody wants some tips or help, you know, down the road with some of those options in the chat box. So Sharon.
Hi. So we are going to, last but not least at all, we're going to start our conversation with Noam Tamir. He's the founder and fitness coach of TS Fitness, which means Together Stronger, which I love. It's a personal training and small group fitness gym he opened in 2011 with the vision of creating a community-rich fitness environment. His staff make up some of New York City's top-notch fitness trainers. He's inspired by getting people feeling better and accomplishing their goals.
So, well, first of all, fortunately enough, I live about 40 feet away from my studio, which I'm super, super grateful for. So I'm actually there right now. So I know everybody's been sitting down for a while, so I'm going to start us off with some movement. So we're actually going to get up for 1 second. I'm going to explain to you a little bit about what we're going to do and why we're doing it. So let's have everybody stand up real quick. All right. So we're going to do some cross body touches. Okay. So this is something I've been sitting a lot more than I normally do. My lower back is tight. My mind is not focused. So we're just going to raise our right arm and touch our left knee. And then we're just going to cross body and just cross body touch. Now, the reason why we do this is it gets both of our hemisphere of our brain going. So we're going to do this for about like 15 seconds, and then we're going to sit back down. But the whole idea of this is, again, to kind of get your brain moving, to get your mind focused, and just get you also out of that seated position where like your hips get tight, your lower back gets tight, posture gets bad. So we're going to sit back down. So just to move a little bit. So this has been really a incredible journey for me and for my team. I have about 7 trainers that work for me, and we've basically had to pivot our whole business and go virtual, you know. And we have really had an opportunity here to make a huge positive impact on people. And we've really seized that opportunity. I have one client that I've trained virtually for a number of years now. I have a client that lives upstate in Rochester. I have a client that lives down in Florida. So I've done it before. This really pushed a lot of my team to have to do it, because this is really the way that we are surviving, because we have a physical space, we have overhead, we have all that type of stuff. But the effect that fitness has, because it's one of those few things that you can actually do right now, is exercise. And I think that this is one of the things that humanity is going to benefit from, is people are exercising who never exercised before. You know, people are doing something because there's really nothing else to do. They're going out for walks, they're bike riding, they're doing, you know, this boot camp workout, they're doing all types of things. So it's really empowering people. And my hope is that it continues after this. The idea of exercise is helping people focus. You know, a lot of you have spoken. Stephen spoke about all the stress that people are going through. Lindsay spoke about all the type of, you know, the increase in divorce rates and everything. And exercise is such an incredible way to release that stress, to keep calm under these really extenuating and very difficult circumstances. So that's one thing. Also just health, overall health. You know, we're seeing a lot of people who are not good health being victim to, you know, COVID-19. So it's giving people a little bit of a scare that they're going to take care of themselves a little bit more, exercise more, have a stronger, you know, healthier heart, things of that nature. So that's really what that overview has been.
What other new things are you doing? I know that one thing that you're starting in a little bit right after this is your kids program, which you didn't have before. Tell us about that.
So we're all about giving back at TS. Last year we did a charity event every month of the year. And I'm a little kid inside, and I love to play, and I love to do all types of, you know, monkeying around and stuff like that. And I have a lot of friends that have kids. And we were on a couple of Zoom calls, and they were like, I'm freaking out, I'm losing my mind. And I was like, well, what if I did like a kids class? Do you think they would love that? They were like, please do that. You know, get rid of some of their energy. So I started doing it, and I actually got one of my coaches who was the dance instructor, you know, because I feel like, especially like, you know, young females, you know, young kids would respond quite well to doing like dance classes and things like that. So she does a dance class. Her classes are a little bit more popular than mine, but that's okay. And then we decided that, you know, I'll do things like crawling on the floor, bear crawls. We'll do, you know, Simon says, but I say it's Noam says. I'll make them, you know, run in place, do push-ups, all that. And then, you know, catch them not listening and stuff, and, you know, mess with them a little bit. We do coordination. I started focusing a little bit more on like explaining to them what endurance is, explaining to them what power is, explaining to them what speed is like, you know, all that type of stuff. So it's really great to see them. So we're donating, half of that money is going towards my payroll, towards my team. And then the other half is going towards City Harvest, which is an organization that, you know, helps to feed healthy, hungry New Yorkers, which usually they take the excess stuff from like restaurants and stuff. So there's even less of that now. So they're more in need of that, even more of that funding. So I'm connected through some old clients. We've actually taken all of our equipment, and I'll show you, like, I have a kettlebell rack over here that's completely empty. And we've actually had clients.
Some of them are in my living room now.
Yes. And giving them to clients so that they have something, you know, because you can't order anything right now. Everything is sold out, and you can't even like you know, a lot of stuff is, and the stuff that is there is like quadruple the price. It's crazy. You try to get like a 25-pound weight, they want $100 for it, which I think is ridiculous. So we've actually been doing, I've been having clients order an Uber to my place. I'll go down and I put the weights in the trunk of the Uber, and then they take it home because, you know, some of them are not very close, they're on the west side and things like that. So so it's, again, it's really created a great opportunity. We've done one-on-one, which a lot of people were very resistant to, a lot of our clients, because they're like, I need the physical touch, you know, I need the atmosphere, and they have absolutely loved it. And they're like, okay, I want to book more, I want to book more. And then we've done Zoom classes. So we've had to change our whole marketing, we changed our whole website. Everything is geared towards virtual now. And the response has been great. I mean, people wake up, they have a purpose, you know, they exercise in the morning, they get their movement in, it changes your mood, gives you motivation. So yeah.
About keeping routine.
I'm sorry?
All about keeping routine.
Yeah, and that's something that people now can do anytime during the day almost, you know, so they have the flexibility. We've had people who have become more consistent with exercise because now they just have more flexibility. You know, people would get too busy for work and now they're all of a sudden training, you know, 3-4 times a week as opposed to 1 with us. So that's been really great. Also creating a lot of educational content has been really, really great for us. Doing some mini workouts, you know, my parents keep on telling me, get out of the city, you know, come up to Westchester, which is where I'm from. And I'm like, no, I need to be here. This is where I can kind of create content. You know, I have this studio here and I can kind of help other people, you know? So I think that when you don't focus on yourself and you focus on helping others, it really, I think there was an article, it was maybe in the Post or it was somewhere, but it was talking about how when you help serve others, you will just be more satisfied. You're able to get through tougher times. So
Awesome.
That's what I'm doing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Noam. Everything that you do and your whole team does at TS Fitness is amazing. And, you know, we could still be keeping ourselves healthy virtually with online workouts and doing everything that we need to do in home. So we're coming close toward the end. I'm just curious, you know, you guys can unmute yourselves if you'd like. If you have any questions or want to add any additional information for everybody, if you haven't already posted anything, your information in the chat, that would be great if you could do that. And if there are any other questions that anyone has for any of the panelists, please use the Q&A and we'll get them answered for you live right now.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
I just wanted to say to Noam that I think that this push for the exercise, I push it with my clients. I practically don't work with anyone unless they're going to exercise. I mean, I don't kick them out, obviously, but it is such a vital part of, to me, it's survival. You know, a trainer of mine once said years ago, it's the drug of choice. Because it just, and now especially, I'll say to my clients, I literally say, exercise your ass off. So bravo to you and the work you're doing, and that's really, really great.
Yeah, I mean, exercise is medicine, especially now, so.
It is. I have a question actually for you, Noam. In light of the changes that we've made to do exercise and workout at home, do you see a potential for the future to include more of that, or how do you see people getting back into exercising in a pre-COVID manner?
I don't think, first of all, I think nothing will replace like human contact, you know, like being around other people, having actually a place to go and socializing with other people. You know, I think that that's an important part of fitness, and, you know, Together Stronger, that's what we're all about. We're all about, you know, creating community, and now we've had to move that into more of a virtual. But I think that what's happened is people didn't understand how great of an experience that they could have with working out at home. So I think that it's opened up, it's forced people to do it, and now they're like, oh wow, I can do this. Plus now they're gonna have some exercise equipment probably there. So they'll have some tools to use when they're thinking about exercising at home, and they'll be able to fit it in now, you know, because a lot of these sessions are 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 15-minute workouts. So I think that a lot of people have the concept, oh, I gotta go to the gym and work out for an hour. And they're realizing that they can just go online and that they can do a 15, 20-minute workout and feel good and be healthier. And, you know, one of the biggest things, and this is, you know, for Justine, is that When people work out, they tend to eat better. You know, they tend to all of a sudden say, I put in this effort, so I'm gonna bleed that into the rest of my day, and I'm not gonna eat that, you know, I'm not gonna overeat, or I'm gonna make better choices. I never like to say don't eat that, because it's like, add this, you know, instead. So yeah, I definitely think it's here to stay for a lot of people, more fitness at home.
Great, thank you very much.
We have some questions actually, or maybe some comments, but you know, somebody who has arthritis and is really just depressed right now. This maybe is something that you can all chime in on. Someone has arthritis, is really depressed because they take aqua classes and they are looking for other ways to keep themselves busy and move. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Just somebody who might, you know, Noam?
For low impact, maybe some low impact workouts.
So I just put actually together a low impact workout. I think it was for, I want to say it was for Self magazine. They were like basically a workout that your neighbors won't want to kill you. So there's definitely some really good low impact stuff. There's a lot of mobility exercises and stability exercises that people can do who have arthritis. And I think also with, you know, just with Justine, like, you know, even just having better nutrition, lower inflammation in the body, I think is really important during this time if you have somebody who's trying to become more active. But yeah, there's so many exercises that you can do, you know, with bands that aren't going to require too much, like a lot of joint movement, you know, which depending on how advanced their arthritis is, I think that they could definitely get an incredible workout. And now there's so much more information online for them. They could probably like Google arthritis workouts and find like an arthritis workout online, a video of it on YouTube, and, you know, just gently try it out and see how it works for them.
Those bands are misleading. They look so easy, but they're just not. It's a tough workout. We actually have some questions. We have a question for Lindsay. Sharon, do you want it? It's in the chat.
Let me unmute myself first. Yeah, Lindsay, there's a question in the chat box directed at you. My boys are staying with their dad for the foreseeable future. We have joint custody and are typically 1 week on, 1 week off. How can I help them understand that it's not that I don't want them here, it's for their own safety? And also let them know I don't judge them for picking their father's house. They're 12 and 16, so I'm able to have adult conversations with them and explain to them what's going on.
So I actually see the question now, and I know that you wrote he's the quote unquote nicer parent. I would take some pressure off of the children by making sure that they know that the decision is being made between the parents alone. And that it's not really the children choosing one parent over the other, and that you're just following, you know, state and local guidelines as carefully as you can, and to make sure that you're there for them. So even if you're not getting them, you know, every other week, you're making sure that you are very present in their lives. I would recommend video calls and, you know, daily phone calls and video calls, and just making sure that they know this is not, you know, a decision that you're happy with, but it's just the circumstances required and their safety is most important.
Excellent, thank you. I know Noam has to go do his kids program, so he's waving goodbye. Bye, Noam.
I know.
Thank you so much. He's got a 4 o'clock with the kids so that he can keep them running around active and keep parents happy. So
thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Jamie. It was very nice meeting everybody. Hope to do it again soon.
Yeah. Take care.
Thank you, Noam.
And if there are any other questions, I don't know if we have any other questions at the moment, but
there is another question in the chat box, Jamie. I don't know if you
can yes, okay.
Go ahead. And it's more, you know, towards the mental health side of things. But are there any suggestions for people who are quarantining alone, doing Zoom and FaceTime meetings that are very helpful but can still be lonely?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think. You know, one of the things that I'm also hearing from a lot of people is that in the quarantine, the thing about New York City is that even if you may not be connected to people, we interact with people all day long. And little interactions may not be super meaningful, but saying hello to a doorman, saying hello to the person that you go to for your coffee. Often we develop relationships with these people, and it helps us kind of not feel so lonely. And when you take all that away, it connects to what I was saying about a sense of loss, a loss of contact and a loss of feeling being around other people. And so, yeah, it is tough with Zoom and FaceTime again, because there's this sensory deprivation that goes with this. So I think, as much as you can tolerate, is reflecting about what parts of your life, where can you find openings to finding more connections virtually right now. There are a lot of webinars and there are a lot of different ways to connect. Exploring your interests, and also looking forward to the day when this is over, because it will be over. Again, this is the level of uncertainty that is really difficult, is that we know it's temporary. We just don't know when it's going to end. But I think sometimes that can be helpful to remember that it will end, that we will get through this, and there will be a time where you can approach your life in a way to make more connections, to respond to your sense of loneliness. And again, as you can tolerate, allowing yourself to feel lonely and know that that's natural. And those people that are sheltering alone, it can be really lonely.
Yeah, I totally agree. Ellen?
I raised my hand like I'm in school.
That's good. I could see everybody, so go ahead.
Also to that, in addition to that, and those are great suggestions, when I take a walk now by myself, I wave at every car that passes. I swear to God, they pass, I wave to people. I wave if someone's walking on the street, I cross to the other side, but I say, how are you doing? So talking to strangers on the street from a distance, that's a connection. So it's a live body, so that might be helpful.
Yeah, and also taking that walk, if you have to take a walk, and checking in to see if somebody could take a walk with you 6 feet away, just gives you such a huge feeling of relief, and being able to see somebody, see your friends some way, a neighbor. I think that's also pretty helpful.
Strangers, it's comforting to
Or
even
strangers.
another human being that you say hi to them. They always smile back. No one has been like, what are you, crazy lady? They all smile back, so I think people are all feeling that need to connect.
We need to connect more, and I'm sure you'll all agree with me, but now that we've all had some time in quarantine to master virtual gatherings, do you all see that we'll be doing more of this down the road and in the future? Maybe in your business, maybe personally?
I really like it. I may be alone in that. I love it. I don't have, I'm good with, I could stay home. This is not, listen, God forbid, but I enjoy FaceTime and I enjoy Zoom. I've been doing it for a long time with clients. I have clients that live in Florida and Minnesota, so I'm used to it. And I have close relationships with clients that I have never met in person, and I have love for them. So I don't think you have to have the physical touch to feel connected. For me, I don't. I'm not saying I want to stay home forever.
Right. Both are good.
I think we'll be seeing a lot more remotely, but I think having a good balance is probably for the best. I know for me, like meeting a client in person is very different from meeting a client on Zoom, but you do the best with what you have right now. But I look forward to seeing people in person again. And I was going to add something to what Ellen was saying about, waving to strangers on the street. I think this is also a good time to reconnect with people that you've lost contact with. I've been hearing a lot from people who maybe had friendships that were really neglected, or they had a falling out, and now is the time to reopen the conversation. And people are really feeling like, okay, now is the time. It's like now or never. And when you're dealing with, very uncertain circumstances, it's good to know that there are ways to still, reach out to people, even if you thought that the relationships weren't in such a great place before this.
It is so true. I love that, Lindsay. Yeah. And I've been hearing a lot of people say, take 5 people 7 people a day, call them. Call people, call clients, call friends, family, call who, go through your phone. You have the time now. Contact people, stay in touch.
Yeah,
So,
and especially people that you have lost, you might have had a falling out with. It is a nice time to maybe mend a fence and have someone back in your life that maybe you realize you really miss them, or you've missed them, and now you're brave enough to reach out.
so true. We actually do have another question in the chat box, and this is relating to kids and keeping active, and maybe taking like a kids class online could be a good answer. But some parents that are home are both still working full time, so, and they have their kids and they're homeschooling. So chaos has ensued. How do parents keep their kids active and give them the attention that they need throughout the day, and also maybe focus on the things that they need to be focusing on and their work?
I can take a quick run at this. A lot of the parents that I'm talking to are, what they're finding is they're having to create, not only do they have to create new routines for themselves, but for their kids as well, and not used to having the kids around, and it can be chaos. And if the parents are trying to work, it can be really difficult to focus when the kids are constantly coming in and out. So it's hard to know, because I don't know how old these kids are or what the situation is. But without knowing that, one thing I can say is, the parents that seem to be managing well are the ones that have a clear schedule, and they're very clear about what the expectations are. At this time, I'm going to be on the phone and I won't be available. And these are the things that you can do to keep yourself busy. And you can interrupt once today, or something like that, but really providing a lot of structure and a lot of clarity about, this is what's going to happen at this time. And this is what, and I will be available for this, and, and giving them activities, and then connecting to these kind of things like study halls that some practitioners are doing, or, online events as well. So that'd be my quick answer for that. Does anybody else have any?
I do. The hand raiser. I also think some of my clients have expressed that they have some guilt because their kids are watching a little bit more TV than they think is healthy for them. One client has a young child. She said, I think I'm going to delay his development. She's worried. And she's a loving, caring mother, but you can't do it all. So I think giving up, trying to let go of the guilt, we're all managing the best we can. No one's child is going to be damaged if they watched a little bit more TV during this period, and it's okay, and give yourself a break.
Awesome. Well, listen, we are at a little bit after 4. If anybody has any other final thoughts, I'm happy to add them in. But we're gonna close down our panel. I really want to thank everyone. My co-host Sharon, thank you so much for joining me today. Ellen, Stephen, Justine, Lindsay, and Noam, who just left. Thank you all for participating, and thank you for everyone who has joined us today. This was wonderful. If you have any other questions, contact us, and we're happy to help you past this call. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jamie.
Everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.